colored ribbon is taking, of course, different colored sugar and putting them together and stretching them. And then snipping the scissors and putting them back together and stretching. And snipping and putting them back together and stretching. Okay? Thank you. So, the key thing is to have the sugar at the same temperature, all different types of sugar. And I've seen, 4 or 5 colored ribbons. It's like a juggling act when you're trying to get, 5 sugars at the same temperature, hold at the same time. Really hard to do. So I'm going to do 2 colors. Okay? Do a clear. Well, clear meaning it's not colorized. It's got a little hue to it because it's been slightly overcooked. And it's extra hot. I'm going to pass it around. Okay. So what I'm going to have to do is pull these sugars together, not simultaneously, but at the same rate. So they become aerated in the same texture at the same time. If one's colder than the other, as I stretch, one will stretch at a different rate than the other will. And that's a challenge. That's the problem if you have that scenario. But it's really easy. When I teach this to the baking and pastry students, they're like pulling ribbons like nobody's business. It's not that difficult. And you can easily do this at home. You cook the solution, which is sugar, water, and glucose. As far as pulling, you need some acid. And I use tartaric acid, or lemon juice will work. And you can cook it at home, and you can pour it out onto a silpat, or an oiled sheet pan will work. And the only problem is you may not have a warm environment like this to keep the sugar pliable. Turn the oven on, open the door, and work in that scenario. Yes?
At what point do you add the glucose to the solution?
Okay, so this recipe I did, which is out of the baking and pastry book, it calls for, do you remember what, John?
Yeah, it was, so you do the corn syrup, 1 pound and 14 ounces of corn syrup, and 2 pounds of sugar, and then you let that boil, and then you brush down the sides. Then when you add the glucose syrup, you don't want to stir it or agitate it, and it's 7 ounces of glucose syrup. Then once that gets to 160 degrees Celsius, you add about 20 drops of tartaric acid.
Did you write all that down?
So are you dissolving the glucose in warm water before adding it to the mixture, or is it glucose
No,
syrup already?
glucose syrup, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because someone used glucose powder today. I've never used glucose powder here since I've been here for 8 years. And someone grabbed it today and it's like, silly me for not saying anything, but I just assumed it was, everybody knew that it used syrup. All right, so now we got this relatively aerated, and I want to cut pieces
160 Celsius.
that are going to be the same size, so about the same shape as like a big finger. Okay. If you do multi-colors, if you do the same color, you still cut them in this shape because they're going to cool. If I did this and put it together and start pulling to make a ribbon, this will stay hotter than this will, right? And that's something that I think a lot of chefs who are trying to figure this out don't understand when they're trying to do ribbon. So, no matter what, you got to be the same. So, warm sugar sticks together, really easy. Is that a good sound? Actually, I won't use it. All right, so I'll just do something as simple as this, right? Okay, now we stretch. Cut it in half. Actually, this next step, I'm just going to bend it in half, like this, and that will stick together, and I'll stretch it. So this wide centerpiece will be a wider band. The two on the outside will be a thinner band. Okay, snip it in half, and I can see if I can do it one more time. So the stretching part, you have to stretch it evenly. You can go, and it'll be like wide, and then super thin, and then wide, right? I'm gonna do one more time. And now, because it's cooling down, I'm just gonna warm up the edges just briefly. Usually the ends here and here, you snip off. That's pretty wide, but this will be very narrow when I'm done. Smooth it off against your leg.
Could you face it this way, Chef?
Huh?
Could you face it, the ribbon this way? Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Almost there.
John, stop moving.
Can I go over the table over here? We had a conference here not